Chapter 4. Whispering Woods. The glow of the Eldritch Library's holographic shelves created an ethereal, almost haunting atmosphere as the team moved between the towering archives. Rows of shimmering data streams shifted and flickered, showing the faint scars of the recent data breach. Thorin Ironstar walked ahead, his metallic gait emitting faint clinks, while Lyra Starwhisper trailed behind, her glowing eyes scanning the disrupted energy of the room. Seraphine gestured to the damage. This breach occurred 3 days before the explosion. What was stolen? Thorin knelt near the console, his fingers connecting with the system. Whatever they took, they were smart about it. Multiple false trails. But his eyes flickered as he interfaced with the data. Here, look at this. A jagged line of corrupted data spiraled across the console. Jack leaned over, his Galrex mark. V loosely in his grip, barrel tilted down but ready. That's some sloppy patchwork. They tried to erase their tracks but didn't clean up after themselves. Sloppy? Thorin huffed, offended. This is expert work. Whoever did this knew what they were doing. Jack smirked. Expert enough to fool a system, maybe. Not expert enough to fool human stubbornness. He pointed at the timestamps. Look at the gap here. 20 seconds missing between logs. It doesn't match the system's automatic refresh. Someone's been editing. Seraphine arched a brow. Can you restore it? Thorin's eyes gleamed as his hands worked. I can try, but don't expect miracles. As Thorin worked, Lyra paused mid-step, her head tilting slightly. She extended a hand, her fingers brushing the air like she was feeling unseen threads. There is something here. Residual energy, faint but persistent. The intent was to disrupt, but there is more. This was layered. Jack frowned, shifting his weight. Layered how? Lyra's eyes glowed brighter, and her voice dropped to a whisper. It is not just sabotage, it is deception, designed to sow mistrust. A shadow works behind this. Jack rolled his eyes. Great. Cryptic metaphors. Just what we need. Seraphine shot him a look. Lyra's insights have proven invaluable before. If she senses something deeper, we must consider it. Thorin interrupted with a triumphant noise. Got it. Partial reconstruction, but it's enough. The holographic display revealed fragments of data, names, locations, a log of unauthorized system accesses. Jack tapped the screen. Here, multiple pings to the Whispering Woods biodome. Why would a saboteur care about oxygen levels and plant growth? Let's find out, Seraphine said, already heading for the exit. The Whispering Woods was eerily silent as the team entered, their footsteps muffled by the soft moss carpeting the ground. Towering trees with translucent leaves glowed faintly, creating peaceful yet otherworldly ambience. Althea scanned the area with her portable navigation array, the delicate device resembling a crystalline fan. There are minor anomalies in the atmospheric regulators here. Pressure fluctuations, inconsistent oxygen levels. Jack sniffed the air theatrically. Smells fine to me. Garrick Stonehelm, who had joined them for security, snorted. Give it 10 minutes, hotshot. The oxygen might cut out completely. Jack glanced at him with a grin. Then it's a good thing I've got lungs like bellows. Garrick hefted his GX-22 particle rifle, the sleek weapon bristling with attachments. And I've got a weapon that can punch through tree trunks. Stay alert. Lyra's voice was soft but urgent. The shadows are stronger here. This was more than tampering. It was a test. They wanted to see how far they could push the system before anyone noticed. Saboteurs testing limits, Seraphine mused. It suggests they're planning something larger. Thorin adjusted a regulator, his mechanical hands precise. And here's the kicker. The tampering wasn't to disable the regulators entirely. It was to create instability, like nudging a stone off balance to see how far it rolls. "Or who panics first," Garrick muttered. Jack knelt by a partially hidden device embedded in the base of a tree. He tapped it with his gloved hand. "This doesn't belong here." He pried it loose and held it up. The black cylinder emitted a faint hum, its surface marked with alien etchings. "That's Xeran tech," Althea said, stepping closer. "They use similar devices for agricultural enhancements on their colony worlds." "But why here?" Seraphine asked. "And why sabotage their own peace efforts?" Garrick inspected the device. "They didn't. This is planted. A setup." Jack smirked. "And not a very good one. Looks like someone wants us chasing the wrong leads." Before anyone could reply, a rustling sound echoed through the trees. Jack and Garrick raised their weapons simultaneously, scanning the undergrowth. "Movement!" Garrick growled, his finger on the trigger. A group of Xeran mercenaries emerged, their reptilian scales glinting under the biodome's light. Each carried plasma weapons, their sleek design betraying military origins. "Drop the device!" the lead mercenary hissed, his vertical pupils narrowing. Jack didn't flinch, his pistol aimed squarely at the speaker. "Sorry, pal. We found it fair and square." The mercenary's lip curled. "That device belongs to us. You have no right." Garrick stepped forward, his rifle humming with energy. "You're trespassing on Starlight Keep. Drop your weapons, or I'll show you what human tech can do." The tension thickened, both sides standing off. Seraphine stepped between them, her staff glowing faintly. "Enough! No one will fire a shot." The Xeran mercenary sneered. "Your kind has already done enough damage, human. Leave now, or—" Before he could finish, Lyra raised her hand, and a wave of energy rippled outward. The mercenaries froze, their expressions slackening as if caught in a dream. Seraphine turned to her. "What did you do?" Lyra's voice was calm. A gentle suggestion. "They will remember nothing of our encounter." Jack holstered his pistol. "Remind me never to argue with you." The team regrouped in the biodome's control station, the tension still lingering. "Someone's playing a dangerous game," Garrick said, pacing. "First the Eldritch Library, now the Whispering Woods. What's next?" "Something bigger," Seraphine replied. "The sabotage is escalating. This isn't just about disruption, it's about destabilization." Jack leaned against the console, spinning the recovered device in his hand. "Whoever's behind this wants us looking at humans and Xerans. They're stirring the pot, hoping we won't notice the chef." Lyra's glowing eyes flickered as she gazed into the distance. The shadows grow darker. A larger hand moves the pieces. We are but players in their game. Jack straightened, his grin returning. "Well, they picked the wrong players to mess with." Chapter 5. Agendas. The Dragon's Rest Tavern was unusually quiet, the usual hum of conversation replaced by hushed murmurs. The team huddled in a dimly lit corner booth, surrounded by the ambient glow of the nebula outside the station's viewport. Garrick Stonehelm leaned forward, his GX-22 particle rifle propped against the table. "We've got leads, but we're missing the bigger picture," Garrick growled, his voice low. "We need intel from outside Starlight Keep." Jack Mitchell nodded, spinning a small knife between his fingers. "Agreed. Whoever's behind this is playing a galaxy-wide game, not just stirring trouble on the station. It's time we take this off the map." Seraphine Moonshadow's silver eyes gleamed in the low light. "The question is how. We cannot risk open conflict or compromise the station's neutrality." Darius Nightblade, the human spy, smirked from the shadows. "Good thing subtlety's my specialty." Jack raised an eyebrow. "You're volunteering to infiltrate the Xeran supply ship?" Darius leaned back, his green eyes sharp. "Why not? They won't suspect a lowly technician sneaking aboard. And if they do—" He tapped the hilt of a sleek plasma dagger. "Well, Let's just say I'm hard to pin down." 2 hours later, Darius stood in the shadows on a docking bay. He was waiting for the right moment to board the Zirin ship. Looking down, he glanced at his watch. It was time. The Zirin freighter, Obsidian Fang, loomed in the docking bay like a predatory beast. Its angular design bristled with weaponry, its black hull reflecting faint streaks of starlight. Darius slipped aboard in the guise of a maintenance worker, his sleek black suit blending into the dim corridors. The Zirins were a reptilian species with sinewy builds and sharp predatory movements. Their scales ranged from deep emerald to jet black, and their slit pupil eyes gleamed with intelligence and suspicion. The freighter's interior was stark and utilitarian, with exposed metal grates and dim red lighting casting eerie shadows. Darius kept his head down, lugging a toolbox as he moved through the ship. He paused near an open vent, his sharp hearing catching snippets of conversation. 2 Zirin crew members, their hissing voices low, discussed the recent explosion on Starlight Keep. "The peace accord is a farce," one snarled, his tail twitching. "The Dominion will never honor it." "And yet we suffer the blame," the other replied, her claws clicking against the metal wall. "It is those humans who are the true threat. Deathworlders, dangerous, unpredictable, and far too adaptable." Darius smirked to himself. Nice to know we're living rent-free in their heads. In the freighter's cargo hold, Darius found what he was looking for. Crates labeled with the Dominion insignia were filled with contraband, unregistered weapons, data cores, and encrypted communication devices. It wasn't just a supply run. It was an arms deal. Darius activated a small holo recorder, capturing the evidence. As he worked, the hairs on the back of his neck prickled. He turned, catching the faint glint of a Zirin plasma rifle aimed at him. "Step away from the crates," the guard hissed. Darius raised his hands, a cocky grin spreading across his face. "I'm just admiring your inventory. Very explosive." The Zirin didn't lower her weapon. "You've seen too much, human." "Have I?" Darius asked, his voice light. With a sudden flick of his wrist, he sent the plasma dagger flying. It struck the rifle, sending a spray of sparks as the weapon shorted out. Darius lunged forward, his movements fluid and precise, and incapacitated the guard with a swift strike to the temple. "Sorry," he muttered, pocketing a small communication device from her belt. "I need this more than you do." Back aboard the Luminary Shadow, a sleek reconnaissance ship piloted by Lady Althea Windrider, Darius relayed his findings. The crew gathered in the dimly lit cabin as the ship drifted through a nebula's swirling hues. The Luminary Shadow, an upgraded exploration vessel equipped with a hybrid navigation system, human and elven technology combined under the hood. It was much more suited to their mission than the ship Luminary Hope. Seraphine frowned as the holo projection displayed the stolen data. Weapons from the Dominion, sold to Zirin extremists. This isn't just a factional conflict, it's coordinated. "And not just against each other," Darius added. Their conversations made it clear. Humans are the real target. Jack crossed his arms, his usual humor absent. "Of course we are. We're the wild card in this galaxy. They can't predict us, can't control us, so they'd rather get rid of us." Lyra Starwisper's glowing eyes narrowed. "It is more than fear. There is envy in their motives. Humans have thrived where others faltered. To some, that is an unacceptable threat." Garrick leaned against the wall, his rifle resting at his side. "So they blame us for their own failings. Typical." Althea's voice was calm but pointed. "This arms deal is only part of the equation. What of the orchestrator, the one tying these factions together?" Seraphine's fronds shimmered with evident unease. "It must be someone with both access to resources and influence across the Confederation. The question is, Why target humans specifically? As the team reflected, Darius's voice broke the silence. You know, it's not just fear of humans. It's what we represent. Deathworlders thrive in chaos. We don't just survive the harshest conditions. We adapt, innovate, and turn them to our advantage. Jack nodded. And that makes us dangerous to anyone who wants control. You can't conquer a species that sees obstacles as opportunities. Seraphine tilted her head, her voice soft. It also makes you a mirror. For those who have stagnated, who fear change, humans reflect their own shortcomings. You force them to confront what they might achieve, if only they dared. Lyra's voice was almost a whisper, and in their envy, they seek to destroy what they cannot emulate. Jack smirked, his hand resting on the grip of his pistol. Well, they'll have to try harder. We're not going anywhere. The luminary shadow docked with Starlight Keep, the crew stepping into the station's bustling corridors. Seraphine's mind raced with the implications of Darius's findings. The threads of the conspiracy were becoming clearer, but the mastermind remained elusive. As they entered the Eldritch Library, Seraphine turned to the team. We must present this evidence carefully. If we act too soon, we risk pushing the Dominion and Xiran factions further into conflict. Jack grinned. And if we act too late, we'll be cleaning up the ashes. Seraphine smiled faintly. Then let us find the balance. Together. Chapter 6. Shadow's End. The corridors of Shadow's End were a maze of darkness and light, a stark contrast to the polished halls of Starlight Keep's central hub. Flickering neon signs buzzed intermittently, advertising black market goods and unregistered services, while shadowy figures lingered at the edges of perception. The sector's reputation as a haven for smugglers and mercenaries was well earned, and it was precisely the kind of place where answers came at a price, or a fight. Jack Mitchell led the group, his Galrex mark, V-plasma pistol held low but ready. His steps were confident, though his eyes flicked to every shadow with a predator's vigilance. Behind him, Seraphine Moonshadow moved with measured grace, her glowing staff doubling as a light in the murk. Garrick Stonehelm brought up the rear, his GX-22 particle rifle cradled in his arms, the faint hum of its power core a constant reassurance. We're close, Jack muttered, glancing at the small tracking device in his hand. Darius's contact said the mercenaries were meeting in a storage facility up ahead. Assuming the contact wasn't setting us up, Garrick growled, his gaze scanning the dark corners. Seraphine's calm voice cut through like a hot knife through butter. If it's a trap, we'll adapt. We have no choice but to press forward. The team approached a rusted door, its surface scarred with blaster marks. Jack gestured for silence, then activated a scanner. The readout revealed several life forms inside, their heat signatures clustered near the center of the room. 5 targets, he whispered. Armed, but stationary. They don't seem to know we're here. Good, Garrick said, tightening his grip on his rifle. Let's keep it that way. Jack nodded and tapped the door's control panel. It slid open with a hiss, revealing a dimly lit storage bay filled with crates and scattered debris. At its center, a group of mercenaries stood around a table, their weapons slung casually but within easy reach. Their leader, a hulking Xiran with obsidian scales, looked up sharply as the door opened. Well, well, the Xiran drawled, his voice a low hiss. Looks like we've got company. Before anyone could react, Jack stepped forward, his pistol aimed steadily. We're not here to cause trouble. We just want to talk. The mercenary leader laughed, his sharp teeth glinting in the low light. Talk? You barged into my meeting armed to the teeth, and you want to talk? Seraphine stepped beside Jack, her staff glowing faintly. We're investigating the recent sabotage on Starlight Keep. We have reason to believe your group has information that could help us. The Xiran tilted his head, his eyes narrowing. And why would I help a bunch of self-righteous station rats? Because if you don't, Garrick said, leveling his rifle, you'll have a lot more to worry about than station security. Smirking, the Xiran held up a clawed hand, signaling his men to stand down. Fine, I'll humor you. What do you want to know? Jack stepped closer, keeping his weapon trained. We know someone hired your crew to deliver weapons to Xiran extremists. Who's your employer? The mercenary smirked. You think I'd just give that away? Start talking, Jack said, his voice cold, or this conversation ends here. Before the Xiran could reply, a sharp beeping sound filled the room. The mercenary leader's expression shifted from amusement to alarm. They're here, he snarled, reaching for his weapon. The explosion came without warning, tearing through the far wall and throwing the team off their feet. Jack hit the ground hard, his pistol skidding from his hand as debris rained down. Through the smoke and chaos, shadowy figures emerged. Mercenaries in advanced combat armor, their weapons glowing with lethal energy. Ambush! Garrick roared, firing a volley from his rifle. The plasma rounds lit up the room, forcing the attackers to scatter. Jack scrambled for his weapon, rolling behind a crate as enemy fire peppered the ground around him. He returned fire, the sharp crack of his pistol cutting through the noise. Looks like someone doesn't want us asking questions. Seraphine raised her staff, a barrier of shimmering energy forming around her. They're here to destroy the evidence. We can't let them succeed. The mercenaries were relentless, their movements coordinated and precise. Garrick took down 2 with well-placed shots, but their numbers didn't seem to dwindle. These guys are professionals, he growled, reloading. We're outgunned. Darius appeared from the shadows, his plasma dagger flashing as he took down an attacker from behind. Tell me something I don't know. Amid the chaos, Seraphine spotted the Xiran leader crawling toward the table, a datapad clutched in his claws. Jack! She called. The evidence! Jack dove toward the table, narrowly avoiding a burst of plasma fire. He reached the Xiran just as the mercenary leader activated a self-destruct sequence on the datapad. Too late, human! The Xiran hissed, his voice filled with venom. You'll never know who's pulling the strings! Jack didn't hesitate. He fired point blank, the shot burning a hole through the datapad and the mercenary's hand. The Xiran howled in pain, but Jack grabbed the damaged device, tucking it into his jacket. We'll see about that. Fall back, Seraphine ordered, her barrier flickering under the relentless assault. The team retreated through the smoke and debris, covering each other as they made their way to the exit. Garrick fired a final round, bringing down the ceiling and cutting off their pursuers. Outside, the group caught their breath in the relative safety of a deserted corridor. Jack handed the damaged datapad to Darius, who inspected it with a grim expression. It's corrupted, Darius said. Whatever was on here is gone. Not entirely, Jack replied, his voice tight with frustration. I saw fragments before it was wiped, enough to know this isn't just about Xiran extremists. There's a third-party funding and coordinating them. And humans are still the scapegoat, Darius said darkly. Maybe they're not wrong. Jack turned on him, his eyes blazing. What's that supposed to mean? You heard the mercenaries, Darius shot back. Deathworlders are a threat. Maybe some humans decided to lean into that reputation. Jack's fists clenched, but Seraphine stepped between them, her voice calm but firm. Enough. We cannot let our doubts divide us. The truth remains our priority. Jack glared at Darius for a moment longer, then turned away, his jaw tight. Fine, but I'm not going to stand here and let humans take the fall for someone else's scheme. Seraphine placed a hand on his arm, her touch grounding him. And we won't. But we need to work together if we're to uncover the real threat. The group fell into tense silence, their unity frayed but not broken. As they made their way back to Starlight Keep, the weight of their mission pressed heavier than ever.